February 11th, 2021. This is the regular city council meeting for the city of St. Peter. It is 7 o'clock. This meeting is being held in person and virtually. With that, we will call the meeting to order. Would all please join in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And Russ, your mic does sound all right. Everyone should have a copy of the agenda. Are there any changes, corrections to the agenda? If not, is there a motion to approve?
Ed will make a motion to approve the agenda.
Noel will second.
Ed 1, Shannon 2, all in favor of the agenda as presented, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Agenda is approved. Next, we have the minutes from our December 14th, 2020 meeting. Those minutes appear on pages 6 through 10. Are there any changes or corrections to those minutes? If not, is there a motion to approve?
Carrie Johnson will make a motion to approve.
Ed will second.
Emily will second.
Okay, Carrie 1, Ed 2, all in favor of the minutes as written, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Those minutes are approved. Next, we'll address visitors. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to the council on any agenda item? Seeing no one, is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to the council on any matter whatsoever? Seeing no one, we will move on to the consent agenda. The consent agenda begins in detail on page 11 and concludes with the resolution on pages 41 through 45 and includes the following budgeted purchases in excess of $10,000. To Loggers, Inc. for a 2020 Dodge Charger for $27,519. To Eaton Cannon Tech for 2021 Yukon Support for $14,294. To Compass Materials for road salt at $73.03 per ton, not to exceed $17,181. The St. Peter Herald is hereby designated as the official newspaper for the city of St. Peter during fiscal year 2021. The following financial institutions are designated as official depositories of the city of St. Peter. They are First National Bank, Pioneer Bank, Citizen Community Bank, and Hometown Bank, all of them to a limit of $13 million. Councilmember Ed Johnson shall serve as Mayor Pro Tem in the mayor's absence for fiscal year 2021. The following city official appointments are hereby approved for calendar year 2021. City Attorney James W. Brandt and Assistant City Attorney Christopher P. Green. Finance Director Vogel and Accountant Isley are authorized to initiate and receive automated clearinghouse and electric fund transactions on behalf of the city of St. Peter. We have a list of rules and procedures for the city council operations, and I'm not going to read them all. There was just a minor change to one of them that appears on pages 42, 43, and the top of 44. The following council liaison and commission appointments are hereby approved. Basically the same as last year, a couple of minor changes which everyone is aware of. The following advisory board appointments. Hospital Commission for 2021 to 2025 to Carolyn Dobler, and the Library Advisory Board from 2021 to 2023 to Deb Fitchner. The following license applications for soft drinks, and these are all for fiscal year 2021, to Arby's, to Extra Innings Paninos and Pizza, and to Mcleod County Ag Society. A tobacco license for fiscal 2021 to Dollar General. A show license to the Mcleod County Ag Society, once again for fiscal year 2021. The following employee appointments. First, we have Ben Emily for part-time building supervisor at $11.68 per hour, and we have Grant Nelson as a full-time bus driver for $17.05 per hour, and we have Nick Strand as a fire department captain 2, and Tom Reschler for fire department lieutenant 2. Plus the regular schedule of disbursements for December 10th, 2020 through December 29th, 2020, and December 30th through 2020 through January 6th, 2021. Are there any comments or questions concerning the consent agenda? Brad?
Just essentially a correction. While it's correct on the final page of all of the consent items, on page 14, listing off the appointments, it has Nicollet County Bank instead of Pioneer Bank. I'm sure it's copied from year to year, but quite honestly, I think it happened last year as well. So if we could just get that updated so we list the correct bank, that'd be appropriate.
Yep.
And the resolution is fine. Anybody else? Carrie?
I had a question about the fire department and how those positions are posted and if it's internal.
We can't hear you, Carrie.
Oh. Can you hear me now? I had a question about how the fire department postings, if they're internal, external, or both. Curious about that.
So I will go back and research that, but I believe there are positions within the fire department that are posted externally. These two, I believe, are only posted internally. Part of the job description that's approved by the city council is that they have to have working knowledge of the kind of equipment we have. And so if we had someone that was a firefighter from another community and moved in, they would have to be a firefighter here for a while before they could move up into those positions. So they are posted internally. We also do, however, post them on the bulletin board down at City Hall as well.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. So what does the internal posting process look like? Is that emailed out? Is it posted physically on a board?
Yeah, so it is posted physically on the board, and then all firefighters are made aware of it at the meeting when it becomes posted.
Okay, thank you. My second question is there still a vacancy on the Planning and Zoning Commission?
I'm sorry, I'll have to look that one up. I don't know that one off the top of my head.
Yes, there is.
Okay.
Is that the only one?
Could you
No.
repeat the question, Todd? We can't hear Carrie.
All right.
I'll take care of it, Todd. Carrie asked the second, or I'm trying to remember which part here, but I'll answer the last part. She inquired whether there was still an opening on the Planning and Zoning Commission. And there is an opening on the Planning and Zoning Commission. There are 2 openings in Parks, and there is 1 opening on Heritage Preservation. So I have some cards that were turned in for interest. They only had really 1 interest in designated, so I did pursue a couple of them, but that was the only thing they wanted to do, and basically that was the Hospital Commission, which we appointed tonight, are going to appoint hopefully. So.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Carrie, was that it that you had?
That was it. Thank
Okay.
you.
Emily, did you hear that, or was there some other part that you didn't quite understand? You're good?
That was what I needed. Thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
All right. Anyone else have a question? Chief, we're going to get to you in a little bit, but I have a question. How come we have 1 squad car on the consent agenda and we've got 1 in our new business for a resolution?
Mr. Mayor, let me answer that one.
Todd's got it, Chief.
Yeah, that's because the council rules are clear that if it's a budgeted item and it's above the 10,000, it can be as a part of the consent agenda. We're essentially using cash to pay for that.
Right.
If it's equipment certificate, it requires a separate agenda item action.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Yep. And I guess I knew that, but I just wanted to make sure everybody, it seems to be a question sometimes that comes up, so. Anyone else have any other questions? Let's see, did I ask for a Barb, have I asked for a,
No.
okay, first of all, I need an approval for the consent agenda.
Ed will make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Emily will second.
Ed 1, Emily 2, any more questions now? Call the roll, please, Barb.
Councilmember Terry Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Noel.
Aye.
Councilmember Ed Johnson.
Aye.
Mayor Zeman.
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos.
Aye.
Councilmember Bruflat.
Aye.
Councilmember Grams.
Aye.
Consent agenda is approved. Next, we have unfinished business, which there is none, so we will move to new business. And the first up is the chief about a certificate purchase for a police vehicle. Chief Peters.
Thank you, Mayor. Todd already stole my thunder on this, unfortunately, but that's okay, Todd. What you have on page 46 is a memo explaining the purchase of a squad car from the 2020 equipment certificate. And as Todd pointed out, we have to keep the finance department as well as auditors happy on how these things flow, especially with an equipment certificate, which does require a resolution passed by the city council so that we're able to purchase a squad car on the equipment certificate. The purchase would be for $27,519 and an additional $6,000 to transfer equipment from an old car to a new car. So that's really what I have here, and can answer questions and try to help in any way I can.
Okay. Questions for Chief Peters? Carrie.
Can you hear me okay, Chief? Hello? Can you hear me?
I can barely hear you, so
Okay.
someone might have to repeat
Well,
what she's asking.
maybe someone can repeat it. But my question is it unusual for the state fleet vehicles to be priced higher than what we could find locally or at another dealership? May have to repeat that.
Someone's going to have to help me. I'm afraid I couldn't hear that.
Chief, the question is it unusual for the local price to be lower than the state bid price for vehicles of this type?
No, actually, it's about the same. It's a fleet purchase price, and the state contract meets a state purchase price. We're pretty lucky we have a dealer for Dodge cars in town, so we can also do warranty work easily or repairs easily. But the other positive part of this is that the Dodge provides the lowest state bid also from the other manufacturers. That help?
Yeah.
So Chief, the difference in price from our local dealership to the state bid price is a few $100s normally. That's kind of what we've seen in the past.
Yeah, yes. Yeah, that's correct. We're desperately in need of cars right now because we just haven't been able to purchase them due to COVID. The manufacturers, it goes down. It's high demand now. The other two manufacturers raised their prices pretty significantly, so it really left us with Dodge also. And that's why you're seeing this really actually late in 2020 versus where we would normally have it, which would be, early in the year. But we just weren't able to even order. The manufacturers wouldn't even take orders.
Okay.
So I hope to be back to the council very soon to order another car for 2021 to try to get it in the system so it arrives this year. That's what we're hoping.
Okay. All right. Any other questions?
Mr. Mayor, if I can add
Yep.
one thing. Typically, what we see in the rotation for the chief's cars are an every other year rotation. 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, etc. Now, we've had a few years where we've had cars that have performed really well, low maintenance costs, where the chief has skipped a year here and there. We've had that happen a few times, but generally it's 2, 1, 2, 1, etc.
Okay.
Right, and keep in mind too, our cars then don't usually go away. They get rotated into other city departments where they then rotate a car out, which is also usually an old squad car that hopefully our mechanics can kind of keep rolling along.
Okay. Ed had a question?
On the, Chief, on the equipment and the squad cars, how often does that have to be replaced, or could that be transferred into new cars?
Oh, that's a tough one to answer. Most of the equipment lasts usually 5 years, Ed.
Okay.
As you recall, the council probably recalls, we have replaced our mobile data computers last year. So we try to do it on kind of the off years where we may be buying one squad car. But generally, we can get the equipment to transfer over, on probably about a 6-year schedule. Now, if we have a big model year change, then sometimes the partition between the front and back seat won't fit in a car anymore, so we're kind of forced to replace it. But we haven't replaced those, I think, in probably close to 7 or 8 years.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Any other questions? If not, the resolution approving the 2020 equipment certificate purchase for a police squad car appears on page 48. Is there a motion for approval?
Ed'll make a motion to approve.
Carrie
Noel
Johnson
will
will second.
Ed 1, Shannon 2. Any other questions now? Call the roll, please, Barb.
Councilmember Noel.
Aye.
Councilmember Ed Johnson.
Aye.
Mayor Zeman.
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos.
Aye.
Councilmember Bruflat.
Aye.
Councilmember Grams.
Aye.
Councilmember Carrie Johnson.
Aye.
Resolution is approved. Thank you, Chief. Next up.
Thank you. We'll
Next
see you all next Monday, where we will all be learning together.
All right. We love learning.
It's a secret.
Hey, Chief,
Monday.
as long as it got you here, if you're doing a fundraiser, go sit at some of the stoplights and watch people texting while they're sitting at the stoplights.
Thank you. Yeah, tell me about it.
All right. Next up, we have Russ, and we're going to have some title updates for the, Dodd Avenue Quick Trip project. Russ.
Mayor Zeman, members of the City Council, Quick Trip, Inc. has purchased the former Seitzer Ford property, which had most recently been used as the Anytime Fitness and Saints bus service operations. Quick Trip anticipates the demolition of the existing property, the clearing of the site, and then the construction of a new Quick Trip convenience store operation to begin in 2021. The site is zoned C4, or Highway Service Commercial. The standards of the Gateway Overlay District will be applied. In anticipation of their development and purchase, Quick Trip had undertaken an had a Alta survey undertaken in anticipation of the receipt of title insurance. That Alta survey identified a few planning and zoning issues that the Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council were asked to remedy. In 1983, a variance was granted from the setback of Highway 169 for the installation of an undersized Hardee's billboard. Subsequent to the variance, a conditional use was granted for the billboard. And then one of the conditions was that they provide an electrical easement for the provision of electrical services to illuminate the billboard. And finally, then in 1993, when the site was developed as Seitzer Ford, the city and HB Seitzer and Company entered into a development agreement for the installation of the public and private utilities and development of the site. I will say that Seitzer had met all of the conditions of the development agreement. But at this time, given that the site has been purchased by Quick Trip, there is a development plan that your staff has had preliminary review of. I will say that the billboard is not part of that redevelopment plan. So as such, the variance for the billboard is no longer appropriate or necessary. The conditional use permit is no longer appropriate or necessary. And then finally, the easement is no longer appropriate and necessary. And then that given that HB sites have met all the requirements of the development agreement, it's appropriate to release Quick Trip from the terms and conditions of that agreement. There are 4 resolutions that are prepared for your consideration beginning on 57. Each one of those items are subject to a separate resolution to conform to the Alta survey and specific items that you are asked to undertake. As the site would be redeveloped as a Quick Trip, we will enter into a development agreement with Quick Trip Inc. For the development of the site and the installation of the public and private improvements. The Planning Commission considered this matter at their meeting last Thursday evening, and they have recommended that you accept all 4 resolutions and provide the corrective title actions requested by Quick Trip. Mr. Mayor, that concludes my report, and answer any questions that you or the council may have.
All right. Questions for Russ?
Mr. Mayor, if there is none, I would like to mention, and the reason that I have the city attorney on camera is that the city attorney has worked this through, and these are really based on requests from Quick Trip to cover that. I don't know if there's anything else that you want to add, Jim.
Yeah, no, basically Quick Trip just asked to clear some title issues and didn't want to have anything there. And being that we no longer use that, they don't want the billboard, there's no reason to keep the easement. They're appropriate ones to release for them.
Okay.
And Jim, the reason there are 4 separate resolutions is so that they can be recorded against the individual parcels, because this property covers multiple parcels.
Okay.
Correct.
So the appearance of creating a job of no more attorney work is not accurate in this.
Oh, he actually did a lot of stuff on this one.
I know it. Yeah. You're welcome. Any other questions? If not, the resolution authorizing release of private development of the private development agreement appears on page 57. Is there a motion for approval?
Ed'll make a motion to approve.
Emily will second.
Ed 1, Emily 2. Any questions now? Call the roll, please, Barb.
Councilmember Ed Johnson.
Aye.
Mayor Zeman.
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos.
Aye.
Councilmember Bruflat.
Aye.
Councilmember Grams.
Aye.
Councilmember Carrie Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Noel.
Aye.
Resolution is approved. Next up, we have the resolution approving the termination of the variance pertaining to the same situation. That appears on page 58. Is there a motion for approval?
Noel will move.
Ed'll second.
Emily will,
Okay, Shannon 1, Ed 2. Any questions on this resolution? All right, call the roll, please, Barb.
Mayor Zeman.
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos.
Aye.
Councilmember Bruflat.
aye.
Councilmember Grams.
Aye.
Councilmember Carrie Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Noel.
Aye.
Councilmember Ed Johnson.
Aye.
Resolution is approved. Next up, we have on page 59 the resolution authorizing termination of the conditional use permit. And I'm looking for a motion to approve.
Emily will make a motion to approve.
Ed'll second.
Emily 1, Ed 2. Any questions on this resolution? Call the roll, please, Barb.
Councilmember DeVos.
Aye.
Councilmember Bruflat.
Aye.
Councilmember Grams.
Aye.
Councilmember Carrie Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Noel.
Aye.
Councilmember Ed Johnson.
Aye.
Mayor Zeman.
Aye. Resolution is approved. And the last one we have under this topic, the resolution authorizing the release of easement, which appears on page 60. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved, Mr. Mayor. Steve Grams.
Noel will second.
Steve 1, Shannon 2. Any questions? Call the roll, please, Barb.
Councilmember Bruflat,
Aye.
Councilmember Grams,
Aye.
Councilmember Carrie Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Noel,
Aye.
Councilmember Ed Johnson,
Aye.
Mayor Zeman,
Aye.
Councilmember DeBoss.
Aye.
Resolution is approved. Thank you, Russ. Next up, we have the Community Spirit Restroom Project Preliminary Engineering, and Pete.
Mayor Zeman and City Council. On pages 61 and 62, you have a proposal from Olson and Hobby to complete preliminary engineering for the design, prepare plans and specifications, and to receive bids for 2 permanent restroom structures. As you're aware, the south end of the Community Spirit Park complex, on page 67, we have designed a 2-restroom concession stand, or 2 restrooms with a concession stand. We also have a cost estimate for that facility on page 67. We'll be working with the school district to accomplish that construction activity. And on pages 68 and 9, you have the design and cost estimate on the north end facility. There's a resolution on page 70 that authorizes us to work with Olson and Hobby to make this happen. And a description of those activities are on pages 63 through 65. There's money allocated in the Parks capital budget for this work. And as you can see, there are 4 phases to this construction activity. We'd like to take advantage of this right now to get some decent pricing going into the year. The cost of the engineering is $36,000. Upon completion of the engineering and receipt of bids, we would invoice the St. Peter School District for half the cost. And I'm available to answer any questions that you may have related to the engineering of this.
All right. Thank you, Pete. Questions for Pete? Carrie?
Can you hear me okay, Pete? Can you hear me? I'll just say.
Yeah, or if you wouldn't mind, if you want to try. Just
With
so
the
you can
mask off?
Yeah, just in speaking.
Can you hear me with my mask off?
Little bit.
Okay. I'll try to speak up.
That's
There we
too
go.
loud, no.
Oh, sorry.
No.
It's my
You're good.
yelling at my kid's voice. If you can't hear me, Todd can
No.
relay. But I just had a question. What does this look like from the school district perspective? Are they approving these
Can't hear
plans?
Carrie.
How does that's what I'm
Yeah, Carrie's question is, how does this, what's the school district's feelings, thoughts? How committed are they to this, maybe as part of the question?
What's their process?
What's their
And then-
process?
Yeah.
So Pete, why don't you talk about the design process and getting the bid stage, and then I'll talk a little bit about how we end up.
Okay. Part of the design process, we've been working on this phase for about 2 years. This is on their major needs as far as they're concerned. They really see fields 3 and 6 out there, which would be what I would call the south and east fields, developing into some of their more readily used facilities. And in order to utilize them a little better, the school has really pushed for restroom facilities, concessions, and a ticket booth in that area. And so they're on board with what's going on. We have the okay from them. Todd's been working with them on some financing options and tools, and I'll let you answer that, Todd, as far as where that's going.
So Mayor and members, I do have approval from the superintendent to solicit bids. The timeline includes an approval from you once bids are received, if you so choose, and then an approval from the school district, and that's likely to occur in March. And so that then would put us together. Pete and his crew are essentially acting as the construction managers for these projects. Again, our goal in doing this together is to save everyone money due to the volume and due to the kind of work that's going to occur. Although they are different buildings, as far as size goes, the construction method, the materials are very, very, very similar. And so we hope that that will drive savings. From a financing standpoint, We are sharing the architectural and design costs. The school district is paying for their building, and you'll be paying for your building. And that would then ultimately be approved again on that 15th, as we know what the bids are.
Okay, yeah, I had just wanted to know more about the cooperation, collaboration. from
Pete's
this
worked
point
really
forward.
hard, and they have a team developed at the school district that includes Jordan Paula, Mark Bachman, and others, and how they determined what size, what amenities they were looking for in their building. And from our standpoint, it's Pete and Joey and their teams, and then a review by the Parks Board.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Shannon?
I am not an expert at reading floor plans and things like that, so forgive this question if it's a silly one. Are there changing stations planned in any of these bathrooms?
I don't know if there are changing stations. I think we have some room in there for those if that is something that we want to have. I guess we really haven't identified that need as far as whether or not we need a facility like that there, but more than likely with the age of the people that are going to be walking and having kids there, at least one of the facilities probably should have that.
Thanks. I would agree. I think that they would be well appreciated.
Is that a decision the school needs to make?
Mr. Mayor, if I could, that is something that, at least from my perspective, would be considered FF&E.
Right.
And so it wouldn't necessarily show, at the level of detail of plans that you have, it wouldn't necessarily show. And FF&E stands for furnitures, fixtures, and equipment. And so that would be something that would come, can come at a later time as well.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? The resolution authorizing the completion of preliminary design work and receipt of bids for Community Spirit Park permanent restroom facilities appears on page 70. Is there a motion for approval?
Emily will move.
Noel will second.
Emily 1, Shannon 2. Any more questions? Call the roll, please, Barb.
Councilmember Graham.
Aye.
Councilmember Gary Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Noel.
Aye.
Councilmember Ed Johnson.
Aye.
Mayor Zeman.
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos.
Aye.
Councilmember Bufat.
Aye.
Resolution is approved. Next up, we have the North 3rd Street Center and Mcleod Streets from West St. Julian going north. And we have Pete again, and I think we have Mr. Jeff Domrus here if we need his help. Pete and Jeff.
Mayor Zeman and the City Council, tonight we're asking you to approve the plans and specs in order for us to advertise for bids for the North 3rd Street Center and Mcleod Street improvements. Tonight is one of the situations where it's a continuation because it is an assessment project that we have to bring this back to you. Normally our procedure would be completed a little sooner than this in the process, but because of the assessment process, we need to have this reviewed and discussed. Our city engineer, Jeff Domrus, will give you a brief description of our activities, and then we can answer questions.
Okay, thank you. Pete told me to keep this brief, so I'm going to try to do my best. Rather than present 200 different plans and specs pages virtually, the map that you got there on page 72 of the packet is essentially the plans overlaid on an aerial photograph. So I'll just go through those. It's very similar to what you've seen in the past, in the feasibility report. A few changes there, but I'll point those out as we go. Line work that's shown on this drawing is the same as other stuff we've seen. Existing utilities are shown in the lighter colored, darker, wider lines are proposed utilities. For the North 3rd Street project, we're looking at extending both sewer and water from Mcleod Street to the north. Those are those thicker lines. The green and
blue lines. Hydrants proposed to be constructed there on the property line just behind the curb and gutter on the westerly side of that cul-de-sac. That cul-de-sac is platted, so that is already there. That's something that's not new. So we're proposing to finish that cul-de-sac off with curb and gutter, and I'll get to that in a little bit. As part of the proposed work, new sewer and water services would be extended to those properties that currently do not have sewer and water services to them. So if they wanted to develop in the future, they could. Let's see, storm sewer is the biggest thing I think that we'd like to talk about is storm sewer improvements are proposed there in the orange. Those are the actual physical locations of the catch basins and manholes. Catch basins, of course, collect storm water. Those are shown as the plan has them described, and the biggest, I think, difference here from what we've seen initially, or what we were proposing initially, is down on Center Street. We were proposing a detention pond down there, somewhere similar to that area that's shown in green. Rather than put a detention base in that area, we looked at installing a perforated storm sewer pipe. So the perforated pipe would have drainage aggregate around it and a fabric to keep any fine sediments from getting in. But what it essentially does is it performs like an underground stormwater basin. A little more cost there, but with the competitive market that we see, it might not be a lot of extra money there. And I think some of the concerns were, I know with property owners in the initial hearing, and that is something we wanted to consider. So we're bringing that to the council, because to me, I think it's a good idea if we can do it. And then also we're looking at extending that storm sewer, instead of discharging to the ditch to the north, we're looking at extending it to the south and connecting to the existing pipe there. So we still got a pipe stubbed out for Alumacraft, and otherwise everything else on the utility side remains the same. The only other thing is the proposed improvements. Curb and gutter are proposed on both sides of North 3rd Street, and you can see there in the diagram that's all the way from the St. Julian all the way to the very north and around the cul-de-sac. Also on Mcleod Street, you can see we did add a small turnaround, what we could fit in there. That's the largest we could fit in there given the right-of-way constraints that we have. It's large enough to get a passenger vehicle turned around in there, but there's just not enough room to get for an emergency vehicle to turn around. You need something very similar with that cul-de-sac on the very north end of North 3rd Street for right-of-way. So we've got something in there that will assist, and I think that would help that whole area out and improve the looks of it. Center Street we talked about, that's no longer a through roadway. Instead, there are just to be the entrances to the driveway or entrances to the properties there, and that green area is grass. And then we got concrete aprons proposed throughout the project, and you can see those there also on the diagram. And then also no sidewalks proposed other than down in the very south end. We've got some pedestrian ramps proposed at the corner of St. Julian Street and North 3rd. We have those proposed there because they will be constructed when that roundabout at Old Minnesota Avenue and St. Julian, when that is constructed, those would tie into that project. So we thought it would be appropriate to construct those at this time and get that, because there's some private utilities in there that have to be relocated and moved to get those in. So we thought now would be the best time to do that. Other than that, roadway would be paved. And one other thing I want to note, and that'll be it, is there on the very south end near Scrovey Automotive, we've got worked with the property owner there, the business, to construct a small parking area next to their facility. That would be employee parking. This would be 100% the responsibility of Scrovey Auto to pay for, and they've agreed to pay for that. So that wouldn't be assessed. The city wouldn't be responsible for any of that cost. So that's 100% Scrovey Automotive. So with that, like I said, it's very similar to what you've seen in the feasibility study. So I'm open for any questions. And otherwise, there's the resolution, I think Pete pointed out on page 73, that would authorize approval of the plans and specifications, and then ultimately opening or advertising for bids. And a bid opening is, we're opening bids planned for February 11th is when we are planning to open bids for that project if the city council wants to continue moving ahead. So with that, I'll stop there and answer any questions.
All right. Questions for Jeff or for Pete? Jeff, I have a question. Since we're not putting sidewalks in, refresh my memory. What is the width of North 3rd Street?
Good question. That's something I forgot to mention here. We are going with a 30-foot face-to-face dimension on North 3rd Street. And then Mcleod Street is 24-foot face-to-face, so it's a little bit narrower. 30-foot is the same dimensions that we have on our roadways up in the Traverse Green subdivision. Those are the same width.
Okay. Thank you. Carrie?
I have a new mic. Can you hear me?
A little bit.
Okay, so just so I'm clear, the major change is the perforated storm sewer pipe, so that area will no longer be an open basin. Am I correct in that? It's underground?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Shannon?
Thank you. I want to just say I think all these changes are really sensible. I was pleased to see the addition of the turnaround. I had asked if there was room for a cul-de-sac down there, which there isn't, but I think the turnaround will be really functional for the neighborhood and for people who have to come in and do things like clear snow. So that's one compliment. I also have a question. I'm wondering about the green space on Center Street. Because we're going with the storm sewer pipe, I'm wondering why we wouldn't just keep that as a continuous road as opposed to having, I might be just not quite understanding what is going on there.
Pete, do you want to answer that one, or?
Sure. Yeah, what we thought with the changes that we made on Center Street is we were going to turn those back into private drives, and so they wouldn't be the full width of the street, because we're going to excavate the entire roadway out of there, lay the pipe in, bed it in rock, and create a drainage field in there. And so future use as a street, we didn't want to spend the extra money to put it back to a roadway and have through traffic there that would increase the wear and tear over the top of that. We weren't planning to asphalt that, so with driveways in there, we would have narrower accesses to individual homes. We thought we'd create a green space as kind of a buffer, try to save the trees in there that we can for the homeowner on the north side. On the south side, we would have to remove some trees in order to install the drainage system.
Thanks. I think that makes sense, and it does seem to address some of the concerns that we had talked previously about homeowners on Center Street having. So, yeah, thanks again for everybody's work on this.
Yeah.
Emily?
Yeah, thank you. Pete or Jeffrey, I guess. My question was also about the green space, and I'm just wondering if there's any reason we couldn't be more creative than just grass with that area. Not necessarily trees, but what about native plantings, even native grasses or flowers or something? Would that be a possibility?
We do have some possibilities in there. Emily, you got to remember that part of what we're going to be doing is pushing snow down those private drives and probably piling it in that area.
Sure.
So if we can get something that's hardy that would come back even after we pile gravel on it, and do some maintenance there, that's what we're looking at.
Sure. Great, that makes sense. Thank you.
Anyone else? Oh, Shannon.
I guess I have a follow-up question now after Emily's question. Is that something in that green space area, will the city maintain that, or is that the property area, the property owners that have their homes there?
You know, that's a good question. We haven't worked that out. If they have an interest in how that looks, since it's going to be adjacent to both their properties, we can discuss that with them to see what they think.
Okay.
All right. Anyone else? Okay. The St. Julian, heading north, appears on page 73. Is there a motion for approval?
Noel will move.
Emily will second.
Okay, Shannon 1, Emily 2. Any more questions? Call the roll, please, Barb.
Councilmember Carrie Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Noel,
Aye.
Councilmember Ed Johnson,
Aye.
Mayor Zeman,
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos,
Aye.
Councilmember Buflat,
Aye.
Councilmember Ramps.
Aye.
Resolution is approved. Thank you, Pete. Jeff? Next up, we have a hospital equipment purchase of a surgical table. And we have Lori here and Paula for backup, I'm assuming. Lori, go ahead.
It's a dog and pony show. Mayor Zeman, council members, we are asking to purchase what we call a HANA table. A HANA table is a table that allows for the positioning of a patient during an anterior hip replacement. We are unable to get that positioning with our current equipment. The staff and the physicians have looked at two different formats. One attaches to any current table, and the second one is the HANA table. The first one is considered to be less desirable because it's not as stable, and the physicians are more familiar with the HANA table, and it's a higher quality table, and it's viewed within the industry as a higher quality table. Total price for the HANA table, including the table, accessories, and shipping, is $101,899.
Okay. Questions?
I would have shown you a picture, but it looks like a table.
Okay.
I always ask for pictures.
Are there any questions?
Mayor and members, I think it's important to remember that this is recommended by the Hospital Commission,
Right.
and it is utilizing hospital funds.
Okay. Lori, Paula, can this table also be used for our regular, you said anterior, this is used for anterior. Can this be used for our regular usage if needed?
This would be a specialty table, Mr. Mayor, that would not necessarily be able to be used maybe in a fracture situation. There would be additional training that would be required for that. But because of how the patient needs to be positioned and how the table needs to be, for lack of a better word, dropped so that we can dislocate that hip, to start the replacement process, it isn't one that would be able to be used.
Okay. Is this anterior surgery in this situation, is this a new technology, or is this something we're just adapting to now?
So they've started doing anterior hips in the industry. We have been taking our time with the orthopedic surgeons and watching whether or not we would benefit from that or patients would benefit from that. There is some thought in the industry that it shortens the recovery time. It may or may not do that depending on the individual that's having their surgery with the table, but it is not something that we can do with our current table.
Okay, so I'm trying to understand. So this $100,000 plus, is there a return on investment on this thing? Or are we just making people feel better, or is that the only measurement we have?
No, there are a couple of things that happen here. First of all, it has gained some popularity in the press. And there is a view amongst the patients that this is a shorter recovery time for them, not only just a shorter hospital stay, but less pain, less invasiveness. And so they are starting to, the patients themselves are starting to request this type of procedure. We have one surgeon who is already certified in this particular procedure. We have another one who's searching for the certificate or looking to be certified. And the third surgeon that's coming has been hired by OFC and is coming in the fall, I believe.
Correct, maybe about September.
Yep, that will also be able to do this approach to the hip replacement. One of the things that has come to our attention is with the patients requesting this methodology, we do potentially see a migration of revenue away from our site into somebody else who is able to perform this procedure.
Okay. That brings you led into my last question. Because this is less invasive, the way it sounds, do we charge or does the industry get paid more for doing this type of hip replacement?
Unfortunately, no. So reimbursement for this type of procedure is approximately the same as our other methodologies. The benefit to us is that it potentially uses fewer resources on our side.
Okay.
The other thing that the industry is moving towards, however, is also a shorter length of stay, and it may allow us to do some of that in those cases as well.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? Brad?
Just quick question for Lori, just from a finance perspective, did you tell them they had to come in under $101,900?
No, but I wish I had thought of that.
That's all I have. Thank you for
right.
Thank you for the detailed proposal. So.
Shannon?
I have a question about the life of the table relative to the service contract. What do you expect the life of the table to be, and what is the length of the service contract that is included?
So do you want to go, Paula? Or?
Well, I was just going to say, we have some tables up here that we are using that are probably 30 years old. We just recently had one that had a hydraulic leak that we're not able to use anymore. We're not able to repair that, but that one has been at the old hospital and at this hospital and recently retired. So the tables are functional for a very long period of time. I can't tell you, to be perfectly honest, without looking at the contract, what the length of that. I don't recall what the length of that was.
There's not as many moving parts on these as you would think, and it's not necessarily computerized, so the issue really is they tend to last a lot longer when they don't have itty-bitty electronic parts that break, as we found with our cars and just about everything else that we've done. Paul is correct. We have some of our OR tables that have been in the old facility and then brought up here, so this can last anywhere up to 20 to 30 years.
Okay. Anyone else?
Mr. Mayor, if we
and I
can,
guess-
we can look up the service contract information and provide that
Okay.
to the council so that you're aware of that.
Okay, very good. Did I hear another voice? I'm sorry. Shannon?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just going to follow up, and Todd answered my question.
Okay, all right. Anyone else? If not, the resolution approving the purchase of a surgical table for River's Edge Hospital and Clinic appears on page 75. Is there a motion for approval?
Ed will make a motion to approve.
Noel will second.
Ed 1, Shannon 2. Any more questions at this time? Call the roll, please, Barb.
Councilmember Noel,
Aye.
Councilmember Ed Johnson,
Aye.
Mayor Zeman,
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos,
Aye.
Councilmember Ruflat,
Aye.
Councilmember Grams,
Aye.
Councilmember Carrie Johnson.
Aye.
Resolution is approved. Thank you, Lori. Paula?
Thank you as well. Have a nice evening. Mr. Mayor, I was able to quick find that the subscription in months for that contract is set at 48 and to be included in that price.
48 months?
48 months.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, we have the Employee COVID-19 Extended Leave Bank. Todd?
Mayor, members, this is an item that you talked about, at least in one shape or form, late last year, and you talked about it at your last workshop in specific form. And so the information that's provided starts in your packet on page 76. The goal of this proposal to the City Council is to provide that really last-ditch protection for employees that might have been significantly impacted or their families significantly impacted by COVID-19. And so this establishes a one-time bank only that can only be used for COVID, and it really provides 40 hours of pay and benefits to employees that can substantiate and document that they have been impacted and must take time off, either due to family members, care, or their own self-care related to COVID-19. It provides for a hierarchy of use of other benefits. For example, vacation and sick leave and comp time must be utilized first and must be exhausted before this becomes available. This works potentially in tandem with the in-the-hole bank of dollars that you provide to employees currently, and then does provide that opportunity for potentially up to 80 hours of absence from work with pay, again, if you are and can document that you are impacted by COVID-19 in the ways that are specified within the policy. This is an interesting one in that many of your very well tenured employees, which includes frankly a majority of your employees, if we look at those that have tenure of 10 years or more with you, have lots of vacation or sick leave that may be available to them. But we do have folks that are newer to your employ or have had other substantial health issues in the past that might be down to, as I like to say, nubbins, and might not have much left. Our goal is to help at least provide some measure of benefit to them so that they're not put in the position of having to come to work sick, lie about their health, or other issues that they may face. We think this helps the employees, particularly your new ones or those that have had other health issues. I also think it helps all the rest of your employees by at least providing that buffer so that employees can be paid and not hopefully be exposed to those folks that are faced with the choice of making their house payment or coming to work. And so that's the goal of this. We talked, I think, in pretty good detail about the policy at your workshop, so I'm happy to answer any questions or talk about it more. But the policy is included as a part of the resolution, which starts on page 80. And again, it provides for 40 hours of this time. It examples and provides information relative to you must use your sick and vacation time and comp time before you have access to this. And so I think it outlines the program quite well. Again, this would be in place as long as there is a state of emergency in place or until the council determines that you would votes to stop or terminate the policy. Again, it's a one-time bank of 40 hours and stops at the end of emergency or when the council tells me it stops.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, that's the basic information, I believe.
All right, questions? Like Todd said, we talked about this, and we had a lot of good discussion on it, and I think we all kind of agreed that we had to do something.
Mr. Mayor, if I can, certainly the council could do more or less related to this. There are many different things, but as I illustrated last week, after some work that goes on amongst other communities and we share data and information, this is really a response to the end of the CARES resources and the leave that was provided under the federal legislation that ended on December 31st. Most cities are not doing anything. They're just allowing this to expire. This provides, again, some small stopgap measure for those that might be adversely impacted.
All right. Questions? If not, the resolution establishing temporary COVID-19 illness extended illness bank appears on pages 80 and 81. Is there a motion for approval?
Emily will make a motion to approve.
Steve Grabs, a second.
All right, Emily 1, Steve 2. Any more, or any questions at this time? Call the roll, please, Barb.
Councilmember Ed Johnson,
Aye.
Mayor Zeman.
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos,
Aye.
Councilmember Bruflat,
Aye.
Councilmember Grams,
Aye.
Councilmember Carrie Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Noel.
Aye.
Resolution is approved. That concludes our new business. Next up, we have reports. Happy New Year, and that's all I have. Todd, up to you.
Mr. Mayor, I do have a couple of things to mention. First of all, next Monday is MLK, or Martin Luther King Day, so city offices, non-emergency offices will be closed that day. In conjunction with that, I do want to mention, has maybe a little bit of a COVID update, that as folks may be aware, the community center is now open, and I anticipate City Hall and Public Works Administration being open starting on the 14th for regular business. I believe that's Thursday the 14th for regular business. And so please be looking out for that. We're still going to encourage folks to call or use Zoom or go to meetings and those type of things, but people will be able to come in. The reason for the 14th, as you know, is that in past COVID time when we have been closed, we have been open for a couple of days for those folks that really use cash as a payment method for their utilities. And that typically starts around the 14th, and certainly bills are due on the 15th. So just wanted to make you aware of why we're selecting those dates. And then with MLK Day in there, we really start being open then, of course, on the 19th, which is Tuesday. As a reminder, you will not have a workshop on that Monday. It will move to Tuesday as well. So just as a reminder for people that might watch or for council members. The next item that I have is under state law, we're required to provide a report based on closed sessions that you've had, and this is the next regular meeting since you had closed sessions. So there are really three that I want to mention just very briefly. Certainly one of which is 101 North Front Street. You have another closed session on that today, and so the goal for the meeting today is to provide you an update on the negotiations that have set forth. With both of the closed sessions today, Mr. Mayor, members, we do not anticipate coming back into regular session to take any action, but we'll provide you an update on that. The other one, the closed session that you had related to the city administrator's contract, and so that still is an ongoing process, and the city attorney will update that for you, I think, at the next council meeting, but we're required to do that, and so you had discussion about city administrator contract was also one of the items that you had on that agenda item. Mr. Mayor, I think that's all I have for you under reports.
Okay.
And then, of course, the request for executive session for the two items that are listed, sir.
Right, okay. Before we go into closed session, is there any questions for Todd or anyone else? Or do you have something anyone would like to share with the council? And Brad?
Yeah, Todd, just basically, our newest legislator has currently found herself in the newspaper on the wrong side. You do have alternatives for, you're not relying on her for pushing the sales tax through, correct? You do have other avenues at this point that you're...
So I'll be frank. Yes, certainly, typically, a bill of this type is authored in both the House and the Senate. And so I have visited with Senator Friends and with his administrative assistants, and we have talked about two specific items. And so just to refresh the council's memory, there are two items that we're looking for. One, and the primary one, is authorization for there to be a local option sales tax put on the ballot in November of 2021. So that's one bill. The second bill relates to us having a variance, an ability to not be charged sales tax on materials for the new fire hall. So that's number two. I have been in the process of visiting with Representative Ackland, and in fact, I have a virtual meeting with her coming up yet this week to talk about it. If we struggle in that bill being heard by the House Tax Committee, I'm not sure where we'll go from there. I will certainly work with other legislators and hope that, as typically occurs, there's an omnibus tax bill or other omnibus bills that occur, and there's conference committee between the House and the Senate where they get together, and it will be my hope that even if it isn't authored in one of the houses or doesn't pass committee, that we might get lucky and it be contained in a conference committee bill. But Councilmember DeVos, I cannot guarantee that. And I don't know, I'm not very politically savvy, Brad, and so I don't know how this will work necessarily in St. Paul, but certainly it will be my goal to continue to work with your state elected representatives to use them as the conduit to make and promote those actions at the state level, which is required as a part of this. I hope that answers your question.
I just became concerned as I read basically articles discussing for those, not just her, but those other legislators that were there, talk of censorship or other forms of or other forms of punishment for being at the storm of the Capitol rally. So that's how that's my biggest concern, is making sure we at least have some other alternatives. So
yeah, I can't speak to all the legal issues or political issues that might come up at St. Paul as a part of all of this. All I can do is tell you that I think our primary plan continues to be the plan, and as that doesn't work or struggles to work, I'll continue to work other avenues as best as we can, which will likely, as in previous years, require assistance from the City Council. As you know, last time when we sought this before COVID impacted it, the mayor and one of the council members, I think Councilmember Ed Johnson, went up and testified in front of the House Committee, and I think it was received very well. As you may recall, we were one of 14 communities that entered or asked to have legislation for that local option sales tax, and only 2, one of which was us, met the new minimum threshold requirements that were envisioned by the tax chair at that time. But certainly, politics can have a play in this, and so we'll do what we can.
okay, thank you.
Carrie?
Todd, with bank lobbies closed, do we provide notary services for those that need it if our office is open?
We do have notaries. I cannot tell you that we always have one in the building, but we have 3 notaries on staff during regular business hours generally. But if illness or other things occur, I can't guarantee that we do. But there's certainly other options, and banks do notarize with the right kind of ID. I don't think they do it through the vacuum-controlled drive-up, but through the regular drive-up, they still are doing those types of things.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, Ed?
I just got one thing. In the last 6 weeks, I've been unemployed, so I've been walking my dog a lot. And I would just like to remind everybody that they have to clean up their pet's mess. I've walked on sidewalks where there's actually been pets do their duty right on the sidewalk and people don't even pick it up. So, but just because it's wintertime doesn't mean you don't have to clean up.
Good point. Anyone else? Todd, county and COVID vaccinations, do we know, do they have a plan?
Mr. Mayor, I do not know what their plan is. I know that they have been working on a plan, but I have not seen an update. I'm not sure when I will see an update,
Okay.
but they have received vaccine, and I know there's a plan. I know they have had discussion prior to the time that they received the vaccine, that the community center might be involved as a vaccination location, but they've also talked about a drive-through location, which could be located at the hospital or a couple of different spots as well. So we'll keep folks updated as we know, as I know the county will, but they have been working on a plan for that.
Okay, all right, thank you. If no one else has anything to add or questions, we will now have a resolution calling for a closed session, and as Todd mentioned earlier, we will only be coming back into open session to adjourn. The resolution calling for closed session appears on page 82, and it is for the discussion for the purchase or sale of real property at two sites, 101 North 4th, or North Front, excuse me, and 2100 North Sunrise. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved, Mr. Mayor. Steve Graves.
Emily will second.
Steve 1, Emily 2. Any questions? Call the roll, please, Barb.
Mayor Zeman.
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos.
Aye.
Councilmember Bruflat.
Aye.
Councilmember Grahams.
Aye.
Councilmember Carrie Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Noel.
Aye.
Councilmember Ed Johnson.
Aye.
Resolution is approved. We will now recess to the closed session. And like I said earlier, the only thing we'll come back for into open session for is to adjourn.